Well, thank you everybody for joining us for today's Backpacks to Briefcases Blazing Ahead. I'm Greg Berry, Assistant Director in the UAB Office of Alumni Affairs. Since we're virtual, please excuse any glitches or things that may seem out of place. If your video or audio stops, click the reconnect button at the top of your screen to get back to the webinar quickly. We're going to have time for questions after tonight's presentation. As Gina goes through her presentation, be sure to put your questions in the chat box. I'll make sure that she has a chance to answer as many of those as possible. Tonight's webinar is part of our Backpacks to Briefcases Evergreen Certificate Series. This new series will have 4 events each year, 2 in the spring and 2 in the fall. Topics will focus on financial planning, personal branding, workplace skills, and personal life. Between each event, there will be a chance to take advantage of golden electives. These will be things like lunch and learns and networking and volunteering opportunities. To receive your Evergreen certificate and your Evergreen lapel pin, you must complete all 4 Evergreen events and 2 golden electives. These don't have to happen within the same calendar year, so you can just jump in and join us at any time. This will be an ongoing process. Students and young alumni are welcome to participate. We're going to have more information online at alumni.uab.edu/backpacks. I will also highlight upcoming opportunities for this Evergreen program after the presentation. Tonight, we welcome Gina Cannady, Assistant Vice President of Marketing and Business Development at Legacy Community Federal Credit Union. At Legacy, Gina guides strategic marketing and develops community-based financial wellness initiatives. Gina is a certified credit union financial counselor and chair of the Legacy for Good Foundation. At this time, I would like to turn things over to Gina. Welcome tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. And welcome to the first Legacy Official Credit Union of UAB Backpacks and Briefcase Partnership. We really want to be able to help you with your financial wellness as you go through your journey from being a student to being out there in the workforce. So today we want to go over some things that could help you start to establish yourself. One of the big things is just learning some basic budgeting skills, because budgeting doesn't have to be a scary thing, but it is something that has to be learned. After that, just going to go over some things with how to start building your credit and what happens if you've had a few glitches in your credit. How do you rebuild? And then how do we kind of look to the future? If you have any questions, like Greg said, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end.
For some reason, Gina, I think you have gone on mute, and I'm not sure why. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
There we go. So we want to look at some basic budgeting skills. And the first thing when you discuss budgeting is you have to ask yourself, do you feel in control of your money? Or is your money situation controlling you? Are you proactive or reactive when it comes to establishing your budget and building towards the future? Often when you are young and starting out, you do feel like that life is controlling you and you feel a little helpless. But you don't have to feel that way. The first thing, before you put pen to paper and we discuss anything about numbers, is you need to look about the emotional responses we all have to money and to finance. One of the big things is you're just afraid you're not going to have enough, that you're going to not be able to provide for your family. Or maybe it's you think that I should know that, so I'm not going to ask the questions. Always ask the questions. Always look for better ways to manage your funds. And then, guilt. Maybe it's, I haven't handled it as well as I need to, so I shouldn't be able to have the life that I want to lead because I didn't ask those questions and then I don't have everything I need. And a lot of times when people get in debt, they stop talking about their debt because of the shame factor. And you don't want that. You want to be able to talk to someone, a financial counselor, a family member. If you're in a committed relationship, you need to get past the shame of being in debt and talk about ways to get out of debt. And then there's that keeping up with the Joneses. Are we going into debt because we're envious of what someone else has? Have we thought about ways of achieving those goals without going into debt? But everyone has emotional responses. It's that gut feeling. You know, when you've spent a little too much on the credit card and you get the butterflies, you're having those type of responses. And you just need to learn how to address them and make those responses go from the negative to the positive. We're all influenced by our family. We learn how to handle money from our family situations. And it could be a positive or negative situation. Did your family have a parent that was a spender and another one that was a saver? Extremely common. Which one did you identify more, the spender or the saver? That's how you're learning how to deal with money. So look at where you have come from. Some people actually have the opposite reaction. If my mom really didn't take care of the values, the funds, then maybe I become an extreme saver because that emotional response to those family situations. Or maybe also very common, I know in my family, my parents were savers. My mother was a little more of an extreme saver. My brother is a spender, and I got the saving gene. So we can respond different ways. We can be like or dissimilar from our family situations. But we have to address those things first before we ever can put that pen to paper. So, basic budgeting. Can you budget? Can you put it to pen to paper? Do you know what your income and expenses really are? That's one of the things you have to do. You have to examine your own lifestyle. So one of the great ways of starting a basic budget is to put it into these areas or these percentages. The 50-30-20 rule is very, very common. And it makes it a little easier because we put things into the greatest expense should be your essentials or your needs. And then you're going to have some personal or savings. Personal and then your savings. So this slide shows 50% of your income should be to essentials. And that means your housing, your transportation, and everything that goes along with owning a car, your gas, your maintenance, your utilities, and your food. That should be half of your income. And let me clarify when I say income, your net income, what you are actually going to be bringing home every week, every 2 weeks, every month, however often you're getting paid. But you'll notice when you look at this, even within your housing, even with the 50%, housing should be 25% of that quadrant and not anything more. And that's what we've seen that really started when the housing bubble burst in 2008. People would have 50 to 60% of their housing. So when everything went south, they couldn't keep up with the other essentials and got into a lot of debt. And then when you want to come over to your next 30%, those you want to always have an element of savings. You want to prepare for the near future and the retirement ages. So pay yourself first. Always have an element of savings. And that might be a small amount right now, but that's okay. That will add up You want to make sure you have that emergency fund. You know, there are some things that say you need to have at least 6 months of your essential spending in an emergency fund. Start small. If you can only save $5 a week, save that $5 a week and start preparing for the future. And right now, you know, start preparing even in that first job that offers some retirement benefits, 401k abilities. Do that as well. And then you get 20% in this 50-30-20 diagram for your lifestyle choices, or like I like to say, your fun money. So those are things that you can go out with your friends. You can upgrade that car. You can get the bigger house if you've put enough in it. But you have to start to prepare for that within your budget. So, how do we look at the budget? When we start getting our income and our expenses, what do we need to start to think about? Well, we need to be smart with our money. Isn't that what our parents always taught us? Just, you need to be smart. And by that, I mean, you need to have within your budget things that are very specific. It's not that I have utilities. What are they? Be very clear on what you owe. Be very clear on what you save. Measurable. Are you doing your loan payments forever and a day? No. You do them for a specific time frame. So you want to be able to have an end date. And then the next two, adjustable and realistic, that's life. That's life coming at you fast. That is, do you have something that you can pivot on into an emergency fund when COVID hits and we all go home, or we have reduced hours, or even lose our job? And then, is there a time orientation to it? Are we going to say this is the budget forever? No, you're not. You're going to reevaluate your budget every 6 to 12 months to make sure that it still fits what your needs are. So within managing your money, you want to make sure that you're having goals, because if you have a goal, you will achieve it faster. And all the studies prove that, especially when saving money. So within 6 months to a year, you budget that. That means I'm going to make sure I have a line item to repay debt, to save for a specific purpose. And that might be something like you're saving for that new car or computer or phone. Then you want to have medium-term goals. Let's start thinking about a little bit further in the future. That might be your home down payment, 1 to 5 years. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? That means we have to do a little bit of forecasting. What have we done in our education? What have we done in our career? Will we have changes in our family situation, marriages, what have you? And then those really long-term goals, and I know right now you're young and it doesn't seem like I need to think about anything over 5 years. I definitely don't need to think about sending my kids to college. I'm still in college myself, even preparing for retirement. That's forever away. But you do. If you start slowly, you get there. So slow and steady wins the race. And that's what you can do when preparing for retirement and for your children's college. So we've talked about those emotional responses and thinking about where our budget's going. Now it's time to start putting things down, pen to paper. The first thing you need to look at is, where's my money coming from? What are your income sources? And when I say income, I do mean reliable, steady income. What are you bringing home in your paycheck? How often do you bring that paycheck home? And remember, we always want to look at the net, not the gross. The net, what you actually can live on. Do you have monthly incentives or bonuses? And if so, is that something that you are achieving every single pay period? Do you have interest or dividends? Do you have cashback features on a credit card or a debit card? If so, are you doing everything you can maximize for them? And things, do you have someone who is on Social Security, SSI, things of that nature? Child support, alimony, once again, if it's reliable, if it is steady income. If it's not steady and reliable, do not put it in your budget. Put it in your savings. So the income is a little easier. The expenses, that's where people have some difficulty getting everything down, when it's due, when I need to have everything ready so that I don't go into debt even more. You'll have your fixed expenses. That's going to be your rent, your mortgage, your car payments. Those things that you know you pay a specific amount every single month. Then you have your flexible ones, things that you might have a larger budget for, but they could vary. How much will a gallon of gas cost in a month? We don't know, but we can have a line item for that in our budget. Is food going to be even more expensive in 6 months? We have a food budget. Your utilities, that can be flexible as well. Although there are some ways, even within the flexibility of utilities, to get them more on a fixed through levelized billing, which is something that you can achieve after you have been in a residence anywhere from 6 months to 12 months of steady on-time payments, where you will now know you have a specific amount for your power bill every single month. Then we have your periodic payments. Those are things that we have to pay, but we don't pay them all the time. And because we don't pay them all the time, perhaps every 6 to 12 months, it is really easy to forget they're coming up and to prepare properly. One being, if you pay your car insurance every month, well, that becomes a fixed payment. But if you're like me and you pay it every 6 months, it's periodic. So I have to be very aware of preparing that and having that payment broken down into my savings part of the budget every single month, which seems a little difficult. But if you look at your insurance, specifically auto insurance, and you do it that way, you can save up to an entire month's premium by paying it that way. And then, of course, your taxes. It's tax season, and when you have to pay taxes once a year, then that can be problematic. And that is something that we see at times in the credit union, people actually having to take out loans for, because they haven't prepared for that periodic or yearly amount. The same thing with car tax. You pay it once a year. So you have to prepare and try to estimate that. Now, when it comes for not preparing with your taxes and owing, or even getting a large refund, that is something that you want to look into to see if there are ways that you'll be able to save on those items. You have usually not put down the correct withholding. Changing your withholding can actually change so much in your life. If you're getting a large income refund, then you need to really look into that and contact your human resources department for their advice on how to change that. So another thing, when you start putting pen to paper on your basic budget is to look at where there are leaks, how you can save money. And I will tell you right now that every time I've looked at a budget, it's not the major items people miss. It's the small things, the leaks that start to add up. Things like not turning off the lights or leaving your water dripping. Doesn't seem like much, right? But it begins to add up. And you'll be able to see a difference when you turn off the lights, when you make sure that you don't have any drips or leaks. And that can lead into just make sure you have the right repairs done. If you're in a rental situation, make sure that your landlord knows that you've got a leaky faucet. If you are in a home ownership situation, you're going to need to take care of that situation. Making sure that you have proper insulation in your windows and your doors. That is huge in cutting down on some power bills. And I know that UAB Sustainability has quite a few tips about ways to save money that way. If you have unused services on your cell phone, even in your insurance, why are we paying for that if we can reduce that bill every month? So you're going to need to do an expense audit. Look at the fine print. Do I need all of this? You may, but oftentimes there are things that are added because it is a standard bundle. But make sure that the standard bundle is what you need. Another thing that I'm seeing more and more is that people are cutting the cord on cable and satellites, and they're going to streaming services, which is great because you can really customize what you need. But just make sure you are only opting into those packages for things that you are going to actually watch or listen to. Often I see people adding this bundle, adding that one, until at the end, when they examine it, they are right back at the same amount that they were paying on cable or satellite, just by adding all of these different things into their streaming packages. Impulse shopping. Amazon is great to get it to your door, but it follows me everywhere I go. And I am really, really bad at ignoring that. I put lots of things in my cart and then I move it out sometimes because I'm just like anyone else. I have that, ooh, I really need it. There's a reason the candy and the soft drinks are by the checkout. It's to get those impulse purchases that really add up. When you think about it, if you're going and checking out and they have that nice ice cold Diet Coke for $1.89, you need it, right? But if you go back a couple aisles, you'll find a 2-liter Diet Coke, much more than you're getting in that 20-ounce bottle, for $1.25. I think they know something about where to place those images to get you to buy. So you've got to resist. Or maybe if you know you have impulse issues, you do the pickup. That's something that has saved me with my teenage son who likes to eat me out of house and home, to not even go into stores many times. Managing money is all about paying your bills and making sure that you can do it without incurring fees. Insufficient fees, what we also call courtesy pay fees, can be anywhere from $32 to $45 each. And like I said, it's usually the small things that people really, really don't account for. So that item off of the dollar menu, if we run the debit card and don't have the funds in there, man, that was a really expensive $33, $45 hamburger, because we didn't prepare for that and keep track of our expenses. And then one of the things we also see is just wasting food. You know, do you have leftover days and take those for your lunch? Or are they sitting in the refrigerator until they go bad and we're just throwing them out? Did we buy in bulk and buy a little too much of the bulk and never used it before it went bad? Those things can really, really cause your budget to bust. So look at what you have. A great thing to do is called the look at a reverse pantry. So instead of making the list of what you need and taking it to the grocery store, you do that inventory of your pantry and you take the list of what you have to the grocery store. So you're not duplicating buys. So you know what you have before you buy even more. So sorry about that. Are your scales balanced? Because ultimately the perfect budget is balanced. Income and expenses. As you go on and you become more adept at handling your budget, you will see these scales tilt so that you have more income and less expenses. And that is when you begin to add more and more into your savings fund, your retirement fund, and your fun money, that 20% that makes life so enjoyable. So that is where we have, and there are some resources at the end of this presentation that really will spark what I need to write down, what I need to put pen and paper and get the balance between income and expenses. And that's going to take some time. Go do your reverse pantry inventory. Do your audit on how you watch television, how you listen to music. Do an audit on your cell phone, on your insurance. Make sure that you are properly insured, not overinsured, that you are only paying for the features that you're actually using. That will help you to create balance and build that very first budget. If you are still at UAB, or maybe you've just graduated from UAB, you can start on the path, because the budget and handling your money is the first thing. After that, you start to build your credit file. So, credit is simply the ability of someone to obtain goods and services before payment. When a vendor takes a chance on you, they place their trust that, yes, I've extended this opportunity to them and they're going to be able to repay it. But, I'm sorry. I did do that. But there are different types of credit. The most common one that most people are familiar with is revolving credit. And revolving credit is what you would call a credit card. And basically, it works like a rubber band. You are approved for some, you pay it off, your debt load contracts, back and forth, back and forth. You tap a little bit of it, you pay it back and forth. And you do need part of that in your credit mix. And credit cards are the most common types of that, but they're not the only type of revolving credit. Some would be an actual line of credit or home equity. Another one is the consumer or installment credit. And that is you take a loan out for 60 months at a specific interest rate, and every single month you pay $300 back. That makes it a little easier because you have that amount. Now, revolving credit, that amount you owe each month is going to depend on what you've done. When it comes to consumer or installment credit, you know exactly how much you have due. And that is very, very common with your mortgages, your automobiles, and your student loans. So that is another part of your credit mix. And then you have service credit. Service credit is what you are extended with your cell phones, with your streaming services, with your cable, things of that nature. That actually can be reported onto to the credit bureaus for non-payment, and it will impact how you get extended credit. So those are three. You do need the mix of them when you are looking to build your credit file. So, do you know your credit score? And what does the credit score do for me? We've heard lots of myths and rumors about you have to have a specific number. But what does that mean? Now, there are two ways of looking at this. One is the credit score itself, which is simply three numbers. That is a snapshot in time. It tells what you did in the past. So does it have predictive capabilities? Absolutely, it does. Most people have the same type of repayment skills. However, credit worthiness becomes when we're adding different things into that. Yes, it is that credit score. It's a credit history. It's your open account. It's, have you ever had any accounts closed? What is your debt level or debt to income ratio? When you start taking out loans, you will hear that a lot. And other things. That creates this profile or the credit worthiness of the person. But there's some other things that can influence it as well. So we have the makeup here. Your payment history is going to be your biggest. Do you pay your bills on time? That tells a lot about someone. How much do you owe? Can you repay that? You want to have your debt to income ratio 40% or lower when you have a credit file. Are you maxing out your credit cards to pay your other bills? You're getting too close to being totally maxed out. How long have you had your credit history? Have you opened a lot of lines of credit very quickly? Those things will do that. Is it new versus old? The older the credit line, the better, because that will show us what you can do over an extended period of time. And then the types of credit is that mix, revolving, consumer, and then service credit. So when we talk about credit, we're going to look at credit worthiness. So it's not black and white. It is not only those three numbers. One is your capacity. And my capacity is how much how much debt can you realistically take on and repay on time? So you might have a $5,000 limit on a credit card, but you have used 4,900 of it. You don't have a huge amount of capacity to repay. But say you've got that same 5,000 credit card and you pay it off every month, you have $5,000 of capacity. And that is what we'll look at. If something catastrophic happens and you lose your job tomorrow, can you still repay? Is there somewhere else for you to go to repay debt? Character. That is, do you repay on time? How long have you been at your home? How long have you been at your job? When you start filling out different applications for loans, you will see those questions quite often. And that is showing longevity in that position, but also realistically, you're not going to be job hopping So yes, we know what you make now, but what will you make 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, 30 if you're doing a mortgage down the road? What have you done in the past? Then it's, what is the collateral? If it is a car and something happens and a person doesn't repay, then there is a repossession opportunity, or that financial institution can recoup its losses. The same thing with foreclosure when it comes to mortgages. If something happens, you cannot repay after a very, very long repayment situation, we will be able as a financial institution to recoup losses. But there are also other things that happen, such as you have a personal loan, what's also called a signature loan. There's no collateral there. So you're going to have to fulfill the other parts of the 4 C's of credit, especially your character, to repay, because it's your good name that you're signing there. So what is the collateral? And then we wrap it all up into the credit history. The credit score is the number of open lines of credit. You don't want to have too many, but you don't want to have too few. Have you ever had a lien or declared bankruptcy? And if so, when was that? What type of bankruptcy was it? Different things can really impact that credit history. So those 4 C's of credit are what can really begin to shape your life very quickly, especially if it's not handled appropriately. So there are some myths about credit that we've all heard. One is, if I check my credit, it drops my score drastically. It really hurts me. And this is one of the things that is both true and false. If you check it and you do your yearly credit report check, that is not going to hurt you. If you start putting in lots of credit applications and people are pulling your credit in a short amount of time, we're not talking over a lifetime. We're talking, you're looking for a new car, so you're having everybody pull your credit to give you the best offer. Excuse me. So we see, 8, 10, 12 within a month or less. That will begin to impact your credit score. That's always why we tell people to find a financial institution that has great rates, get them to pre-qualify you, and cars and homes are the most common, and then have them pull it once for you. Then I need to pay off something that has gone into a repossession status or maybe a charged off status. And once I pay it off, it's automatically off my record. It's no longer in the credit file. No, it can take between 7 and 10 years to get that off, according to what you have. Is it simply a charged off account? Or are we talking about bankruptcy or lien on your accounts? That another one is, I have a low score now, so I'm never going to be able to improve it. Absolutely not. You can improve it. It will take some time, but you can absolutely rebuild a credit file. I have always advised people that if you can handle your account successfully for 12 months, you will really see a difference in your credit score. And that is because I want to see what an entire year throws at you. You repaid it fine in the summer, but what happened in the holidays? Did you overspend, or did you stick to your guns and really keep within that budget? Then another one is once you pay off those accounts, especially credit cards, that if I close them all, then it's going to improve my credit score. And it's not, because once you close them, it reduces your capacity. So you don't have somewhere else. Now, another tip I will tell you about this is if you are doing something like paying off your credit cards and you want to keep them on, but you don't want to be tempted, leave them at home. I've even known people to put them in a baggie and freeze them. So it would be very difficult to get that back, so they could not access it. Take it off automatic payments on things like Target or Walmart.com or Amazon, so you don't have to click to buy. But keep some of those open and make sure that you still have that capacity aspect. So when it comes to credit that is offered to you, not all credit sources are created equal. Payday lenders are some of the most expensive credit out there, and not just in the U.S., worldwide. There was a study a few years ago with compound interest in a payday lender in a European country that when they did the final calculations, it ended up being 5,800% because it is a slippery slope there. And there are things that are being done to limit payday lenders. Be very, very careful with that. Refund anticipation loans. We're right here in tax season. You're going to see this. I can get you your refund even earlier, and it only costs you $100. Well, in this day of direct deposit through the IRS, that's going to be really, really expensive. It's costing you your own money. Rent to own, very, very high interest rates on that, and often not quality. So the better quality might be a little higher. You might have to save a little longer, but in the end, you're going to pay less. Pawn shops, car title pawn shops especially, those, once again, very high interest rates. And what happens if you haven't prepared appropriately to repay your debt? Well, now you have debt and you have no car. And then debt consolidation. This can be a great thing if you have someone reputable doing it. There are a lot of companies out there that will say, we can consolidate your debt, get you out of debt quickly, so you have only one fee. Yes, there are some places that can do that, and financial institutions often do that. But there are also some other that will make that promise, but not, excuse me, not completely pay off your vendors. So you might get a collections notice 6, 8, 10 months down the road thinking it's been paid, and it hasn't. Excuse me. Excuse me. So how do you build it if you're in school or just out? Beg your pardon. First of all, pay your bills on time. You know, remember we talked about that service credit. That will probably be what you start with because almost everyone has a cell phone and a plan. Make sure you're establishing things in your name, even if it's very small. You can start building a credit file by being authorized users on parents' credit cards, but it has more emphasis on your credit file if it's in your name. One way that I advise a lot of people to start building their credit file is to do it through secured loans. And most financial institutions have these for the purpose of building credit. And what that is, you might have $500 to $1,000 that you've built up through your savings because you've plugged those leaks, and you can actually borrow money against that. Your collateral are your funds on deposit. It's usually a very low interest rate. You pay it back by a minimum of 12 months, and there you have started to establish your credit file with a consumer or installment loan. That is really going to help you establish your credit. You can start that with gas cards. You can take out different types of prepaid credit cards with the Visa or MasterCard logo, and that is going to start your revolving credit part of your credit mix. And I put up a bullet point here, pay off student loans. That has got to be one of the biggest misconceptions about what impacts your ability to have credit extended to you. I hear quite often, they don't consider my student loans. They can't consider my student loans. That is untrue. Student loans have the backing of the government. That is true, but they're still a loan in your name. Make the payments on them. If you need to do deferments, apply for that. Try to at least pay for the interest during that time. It will be a huge difference, and it will shave years off of that. Make sure that when you are opening your checking accounts that you are handling it well. And there has been a change in terminology from checking accounts to debit accounts because people are using their debit cards more and more. You can bounce a debit the same way you bounce a check, and that's, like we said earlier, between $32 and $45 every time you do it. So those are some ways that you can start to establish your credit, and you definitely want to start looking into establishing that as early as possible. Now, in the state of Alabama, you cannot have a consumer loan in your name solely until you are 19. But you can have someone who is joint on a loan, especially a credit card or credit card, checking account, gas card, when you are 18 years old. Now, sometimes life happens and you've got to rebuild your credit. How do you do that? Kind of the same way that you build credit. You start by paying your bills on time. Then you need to get your credit report. You need to do your annual credit audit to make sure that it is correct. And if it's not correct, then you need to challenge it. And there are some contact information at the end of the presentation that you'll be able to take with you. You want to make sure that if you cannot get a credit card on your own because you need that mix, try the secured credit card. Often those start at $500. That will be your limit, and you're going to pay it back. And remember, start with 12 months minimum to pay it back. So you can also get some credit counseling. Sometimes it takes another person to look at your situation and go, I can identify some leaks here. Here are some savings. Have you considered doing this debt consolidation method? And those are methods, and they're not the debt consolidation companies. Something like the snowball method, the roll-up method. Those can really help you to pay off your debt, your creditors earlier. Now, one thing that I put in here was if you are getting unsolicited credit card offers, you can opt out of those the same way you can opt out of someone calling you and making telephone solicitations. And I put that information in here. You can go online, or you can give them a call, and that can stop that coming to your home. One thing, it's going to reduce your paper. And the bigger thing is it's going to reduce your temptation to do that, because some of those offers look really, really good, but in the long run, they're not going to help your credit. So this slide, make sure I talked about the yearly credit audit. This is how you do it. It's free once a year. That you can do it through Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax. If you stay in this area of the country, more than likely you are going to find that your financial institutions will pull a TransUnion first. Other parts of the country just opt for the first one, Equifax or Experian. There is no real difference in them. They will have the same information on them, but how they're formatted might be a little different. If you want to see exactly how your creditors are seeing your credit report, then and you're staying in the Southeast, I would suggest going to TransUnion and looking at that. You get it free, and I listed, there's some things that you will get yearly, but if you have ever been turned down for an offer of credit, if you've been denied, you can get your another credit report at that time, and you will get what's called an adverse action with that information of where you can do it. So if it has errors, you have got to let them know. That's why you want to look at it once a year. If they have a vendor on there, creditor on there that you have not taken out, that is a red flag for identity theft. And you want people to know that. You do not want to have something affecting your credit score, your credit file that you did not take out. You want to make sure that, hey, they've got me paying on time because I have been paying on time. And if that's not correct, then you need to let them know. So just make sure that you're always looking once a year at your credit file, and then protest any issues. So we've talked about establishing that basic budget and how that basic budget will start to influence what you are doing, what you're doing with your credit file. Now, what you're doing with your credit is going to start impacting the future for you. So, oh, I hit the wrong button. Are you preparing for the future? Or is the future so far in advance, you're like, I'm young, I don't need to think about that. It's 40 years away before I even need to think about retirement. You need to start preparing. And there's some smaller ways you can. One is, do you have a simple savings account? Put some funds in that and start that interest building so that you can have the compound interest. And then when you build up a little bit of an asset, let's move into a certificate of deposit or a CD. Credit unions call them share certificates. And that is where you have a safe investment that has a very steady interest rate or dividend paid to you over a specified amount of time. That can be anywhere from 3 months to 5 years. So are you doing that? Start small. You start with the savings account, you move on to the CD. Now we're getting into what's called wealth building, and wealth building starts small. And then we're going to move on to the IRAs. Oh my gosh, it has that word retirement in it. I'm not old enough to retire, but you will be one day. And the earlier you start, the earlier you can retire. So you can start right now with an individual retirement account in either a traditional or Roth. And the difference in those is, when do you pay taxes? Because I hate to break this to you, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. So for a traditional, it's tax deferred. So it gives me a tax deduction in the current tax year, and it takes that amount away. Currently for 2020 and 2021, you can, under the age of 50, put up to $6,000 into that. So for simple math, say you earn $30,000, you put $6,000 in there, you max it out. For your tax level, they are considered at $24,000 because you got that tax deferment. I'm sorry, that tax deduction now. So you don't pay for the taxes now, but when you can get to them at 59 and a half or older, you will pay taxes on it. The Roth is the opposite. You can put up to $6,000 if you're under the age of 50 for tax years 2020 and 2021, but you're still considered to make that $30,000. The difference is when you access it at 59 and a half or older, you don't pay taxes on that in the growth. So it's when you pay taxes, you're not getting out of paying that. But that is a great way to start supplementing and starting small. Do you have to put $6,000 in there? No, you can put no more than $6,000 this year, but you may be able to open one with $100. You know, we at Legacy actually have an option where you can start one with $5 and then add to it over time. Wealth building. So you can access it, start taking distributions at 59 and a half. If you are in the workforce for longer, you keep it in there, you keep building it up. If you have a traditional, you must take distributions at 70 and a half. There is no upper limit for the Roth IRA. But those are two ways to begin looking to the future, beginning small. Like I said, there are some options that are as little as $5 to open it, and you can add as you have the funds to it. And then your 401k, or some are 403bs, your government savings account or government issued savings account. I just messed that up. But that is for your employers that can offer that option. And I always advise people, even if you know you're not staying at that job, it's not your forever job, it's your first job, but you have the opportunity to put funds into a 401k, do it. Make sure that you are maxing out if you have an employer match. And by that, I mean you put in, say, 2%, and your employer will match that 2%. If your employer has a higher match, put the higher match in there if at all possible. Honestly, when you start small with your 2%, your 3%, 4%, you're not going to feel it because it is so very small. Now that is looking to the future in a way that you're young, you can start it, but if something happens, you're not necessarily locked in to a long thing. There are some resources that I wanted to share with you. I know we're getting very, very close on time. This is your budgeting worksheet. It is broken down with all different categories. So it makes you think about not only the expenses you have today and the income streams, but what the future may hold for you when it comes to your expenses and income streams. So this is something that you can print out. If you need more of these, I will be glad to send you that PDF. My information is at the back of the presentations. And get it and do it in pencil because it's going to change. I promise you, this worksheet is going to change on you. But I also wanted to give you a challenge, and that is a savings challenge. You know, I told you to pay yourself first or to have that element of savings. And that can be very easy for me to say and very hard to do in real life. So there are different challenges that help you learn the skill of savings. The 52-week challenge is my favorite because it starts small. And by that is every week you are going to save just a little more. So in week 1, you save $1. And week 2, you save $2. And by the end of 52 weeks, you have saved over $1,300 incrementally. Now within that, there's also the 26 payday challenge if you get paid every other week. And that is so you can put that in your budget as well. Then we have the reverse 52-week challenge, and that starts at $52 and goes down. That is someone that has a little more experience at the budgeting aspect and the saving aspect, but it can be done. And I love these forms because they have checkoffs. And even though I am challenging you to save, I also don't want you to beat yourself up if something happens and you can't save that specific amount that week. Remember, we talked about earlier to be smart with your money. And part of that was to be adjustable and realistic. And sometimes when you build your budget, life happens, and this part of savings is not realistic for that moment. The car engine blew up. The kids got sick, what have you. Give yourself grace and just start over the next week. You couldn't do that $22 this week. If you can do it next week, do it. Just pick it back up. Give yourself grace. And I promise you, you will get this skill and you will be able to save within 52 weeks or 26 pay periods over $1,300. So this is another one that I like as a tool, which is to use Google Sheets that helps you to start categorizing your income and your expenses. This is also really great if you are in a marital or committed relationship, because it is, you see each person's income, each person's expenses, how it comes together, and how it's impacting that relationship. So this, and there's a link in here that you can access this information, and it's really easy. It takes a little bit of time, not a long time, but it does take some time to get it set up and categorized when you start, but it really can be something that you don't have to have an actual pen and paper to do. You can have it on your phone or your tablet or anywhere you can access your Google account. You can access your Google Sheets and your budget. These are the big three when it comes to your credit bureaus. Credit is reported to all three. They have slightly different methods of determining that credit score or that 3-digit number in there, but they all impact in the same way. As I said, in this area, TransUnion is something that's used more often, but you can actually have each of those to send you that credit report just to see if it's a little different. And here's some more some resources. Your FICO or your Fair Isaac score, that is something that you definitely want to understand a little more. And there's some resources here with FTC and CUNA that will keep you up to date with what's going on, changes in IRAs, changes in CDs. There's some great information through CUNA about what the stimulus is going to do as an impact, not only in the short run, but in the long term. So those are some other ways that you can look into how, starting with budgeting and then moving on to credit, what is going to be the future impact. So, oh my goodness, it went very quickly. What type of questions do y'all have?
I've got questions out there, so I'm going to go ahead and start reading through some of them. Doesn't mean we have to have long answers for some of them. Some might be yes or no, but feel free to elaborate if you need to as well. We'll start off with, what is the difference between a payment date and closing date on a credit card?
Okay, when it comes to a closing date on a credit card, that is the date that we looked at while the activity and determined how much that monthly payment is going to be based on the credit score. The payment date is simply, we've gotten this calculated. Say you closed out on the 15th, your due date is on the 20th. So whatever you owed in that monthly payment on the 15th, that is your closing date, your due date, when that $25, $30, $100 is actually due before the grace period.
Okay. Do you recommend automatic payments?
Absolutely. I do. And I said that really quickly, didn't I? Automatic payments are a great way to always be on time, provided you have the funds available. Automatic payments and automatic savings is another great way to start doing it through a payroll deduction. So both of those are great ways to handle your debt and prepare for the future.
Okay. Is there a golden number of credit lines we should open that meets the not too much and not too few criteria?
That's a great question, because there is not one that is standardized in the industry. Honestly, that is going to depend on who the lender is looking at that and what that preference is. Now, I would say for your revolving credit, that should not be more than 4. And that is not traditional credit cards as well. It's not just you're having 4 Visas or MasterCards, because revolving credit can be that Belk card or that Lowe's card. So 4 is really getting to the $15,000 debt load of most people on their credit or their revolving credit lines. When it comes to things like your installment loans, that's going to depend a lot on your family situation.
Okay.
Because, I have a son who's not driving. I'm single. So I shouldn't have multiple car loans. But if you have teenagers in your marital situation, then yes, you would have more of those. So it's just going to depend on your lender and on your personal situation.
Okay. What are your thoughts on the Discover It student credit card to start building credit? And I know I stumbled over that. So what are your thoughts in the Discover It student credit card to start building credit?
I think that if it's handled appropriately and you can handle that debt load, absolutely. The big thing is not so much exactly which one it is, it's paying it on time. Okay. And hopefully paying it off each month as well.
Will student loan interest accrue 6 months after graduation?
That your student loan interest can actually start earlier according to which type of student loan you have. Most of the repayment start 6 months later. Your interest can start as soon as you graduate. Okay. And I've seen some private student loans too that actually can accrue during your college years.
If student loans that are not being repaid yet, and they're not in repay mode quite yet, are being reported to the credit reports, should we challenge this and ask them to remove it?
If they're not in repayment status and they're being reported as being unpaid, or anything it's called a status 2 or above, and it's actually a number 2, when you look at your credit report, then absolutely, because they are saying that you have an unpaid late debt. I don't know that I've seen that before, but anything that is out of the ordinary should absolutely be challenged.
Do you recommend Credit Karma to keep up with your credit score?
Oh, that's an interesting question, because I see a lot of advertising on that one. No.
Okay.
And I say that because you can get the free credit reports. Don't do anything that they're going to say, oh, you get the basic because that's what you get anyway. But if you pay us $9.95 or whatever it is, then you get something more. No, you're going to get it through the bureaus, and they're the ones that you want to know about anyway. Personal opinion, not endorsed by anyone else.
Does long-term budgeting also include joining life insurance plans?
Yes, that is more in-depth budgeting. That I know we have another one scheduled in March 11th, I believe it is, Budgeting 201, that you want to look at those different insurance options. Absolutely.
Okay. Is it possible to get your 401k transferred to another job?
To another job within their 401k offers? Most of the time, you're going to do what is called a rollover. Okay. And that typically goes into a type of IRA. There are some, I know, within the same industries that you can roll it over into their plan, but it would have to be because they're usually handled by the same financial backing system. Like LPL Financial would be one that you might be able to do. In the credit union industry, most of us use CUNA Mutual, and I have seen people go from credit union to credit union and roll it into that.
Okay. How long after opening a savings account should we get a CD? And after getting a CD, do we stop depositing money into the savings account?
You don't stop depositing money into the savings account. There's no real rule of thumb when it comes to when is the best time to open that CD. I always say start small with the savings account because savings is a skill that has to be learned. But it might be a situation where you're just graduated and you've gotten some graduation money and you can put it right away into a CD. And you want to do that. You don't want to stop putting it into your savings account because remember that CD locks it down. You can't add money to it. And you want to always be saving somehow.
Makes complete sense. Will opening multiple CDs impact personal credit?
No, it will not. Because CDs, unless something happens and you're in a default situation that you've used them as collateral, they will not negatively impact you at all.
And the final question we'll have answered, is it true that paying fixed things like rent on a credit card and paying it off is a good way to build credit?
That you can, absolutely. You put it on there if you pay it off. I always hesitate to say that because it can be one of those slippery slopes. Oh, I paid it off and I meant to transfer the funds from my savings or a checking account, but instead I went on vacation. Can it be done? Yes. You have to know yourself. You have to know your personal situation. Can I handle this? Am I going to actually transfer the funds every single time? If you can, it's a great way, especially if you have a cashback or rewards credit card. Then that could be some ways to have even better outcome. Know yourself, know your situation first.
Awesome. Fantastic information throughout the evening, Gina, and thank you so much for being part of it and joining us here as part of Backpacks to Briefcases.
Well, thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. For everybody who did attend, and for those who didn't, they don't know this yet, a recording will be made available on our website tomorrow. Matt, go ahead and slide those slides up there. We've got podcasts if you want to listen to, UAB Green and Told. You can check that out at alumni.uab.edu/green and told. I do want to get to our events page, so bear with me. We also want you to stay up to date on all things alumni on social media. We can be found at UAB Alumni. And here's that events page. This is where all that UAB Forever Green or Green Evergreen stuff comes into play. You can register for the following Backpacks to Briefcases webinars. On March 11th, we will be hosting the first of 2 lunch and learns that are already scheduled. Join us for Budgeting 201 that Gina alluded to as we discuss methods you can use to save more money while ditching debt. We'll follow that up on March 25th with I'm Home. And this webinar is going to focus on, we'll explore what we should and shouldn't do for first-time home ownership. Then on April 14th, we'll host another Backpacks to Briefcases, Build Your Personal Brand, where you can find out how to best develop your brand so it stands out in a crowd. We'll close April with 2 more lunch and learns with experts from the UAB Career Center. On Tuesday, April 20th, we will host resume building. And then on Thursday, April 29th, join us as we look at how we can improve our interview skills. All of these are part of the Evergreen Certificate Program, and that's key, Evergreen Certificate Program. You can get more information on that or register for any of the events at alumni.uab.edu/backpacks. Trying to keep that simple. Looking to get out of the house? I know a lot of people are. Join us for our 15th annual scholarship run presented by Viva Health. Our virtual run will go from Friday, April 23rd through Monday, April 26th. It has a 5K, 10K, and non-running option. You can register for all of these by going to alumni.uab.edu/5K-10K. Finally, if you want more information about the National Alumni Society, visit us at alumni.uab.edu, and you can email alumni@uab.edu. Remember, all of this video will be found on our website, alumni.uab.edu, tomorrow. Give me a little time to get it uploaded tomorrow. It will be up online. You can look back at everything. Once again, thank you so much for joining us for today's discussion with Gina Cannady. Have a great evening, and as always, go Blazers.